much deeper. You have the tshuva of the Tzemach Tzedek, is a whole chakira of what's the difference between something which is nivel al yedei bishul or al yedei ha'esh. Is a pshat that it goes in, but the bliya goes in much deeper, or you have others, the crazy places that learn that it goes in the same way. Alamai, the difference between Eish and Hagolah is it gets stuck. You can't get it out. So in order to take it out, it has to be seirif at alidei ha'esh. And Hagolah, it doesn't get as stuck, so to speak, to the keli, and Hagolah is enough. According to Tzemach Tzedek, it doesn't even reach. If you're machshir something through Hagolah, which needs libun, you didn't even reach where the bliya went into. So now the Rebbe asks a question, the obvious question. How do you understand Shittas Mechaber? Ubaloshna primagodem vishla'ayin lahechan halach bliyazu. We just ignore it. If I use the one time alidei ha'esh, 90 times through bishul, I machshir through bishul, what happens to this one bliya? We just, it doesn't exist. We just throw it away. How do you understand Shittas Mechaber? It's very, very hard to understand Bashkafa Rishayna. So there's three main tirutzim which are brought in the Achreinim. So that the Pri Megadim himself asks the question as well. The Alter Rebbe asks the question. The Alter Rebbe doesn't ask it. He doesn't answer. He's masber the Shittas HaRamah. Why the Ramah's machriya to say that you have to be machshir with the deepest way they used it, the Eifna Chichamer that he used the Keli with, because what happened to that bliya? You're just going to ignore it. It didn't happen. The Pri Megadim gives an answer. The Pri Megadim says a very geschmack teretz. There's another machlokes in Sim Taf Mem Zayin Sif Yud between the Mechaber and the Ramah. Do we say Neis and Tam of Gam is Osir or is it Mutar on Pesach? You're running down to a problem of Hagolah, but let's leave it on the side. According to Shittas Mechaber, any keli which has a bliya, which you weighted more than Eis la'Eis, on Pesach, if you used it, it doesn't ask your food. Neis and Tam of Gam is Mutar on Pesach. Chametz, yeah. Well, Neis Tam of Gam L'chol Hashem L'kol is always mutar. B'diavad. The chiddush is, according to the Mechaber, even on Pesach, if you use the keli that wasn't used within 24 hours, Neis Tam of Gam is mutar on Pesach. According to the Rambam, it's a problem. You say it's chayz v'nir, however you're going to learn it, but ultimately, even if the keli wasn't used within 24 hours, but now you use it on Pesach, it asks your food. So he says a very interesting nekuda. He says this bliya is no longer a ben yemei. Umemela, the isra is only midrabanan. And the Mechaber is going with Shitase from Siman Taf Mem Zayin, the Neis and Tam of Gam is mutar on Pesach. So even if you're going to use this keli one time, according to the Mechaber, it's on isra. So even though you didn't cash it, you didn't reach to the depth, so to speak, of where the bliya went, ultimately there's no isra. Ultimately it's only midrabanan. And it's mutar. So he says, since it's only midrabanan, even if we're going to use it on Pesach, it would only be midrabanan. Chazal, we're not going on this bliya. Chazal said, you go by Rev Tashmishay, and that's it. You were not mischash with that bliya, loy gazra, so to speak. Since it's only midrabanan, so we say loy gazra. Fine, that's one answer. Yes, that's right. So go by Rev Ishtamshis. When we're mechayv to be machshir the keli, since it's only nisa midrabanan, so we're not mechayv you more than Revesh Tamshus. That's one mahalach that you have in the Pri Megadim. Another mahalach which is brought in the Ramami Panel from the Gedolei Achreinim Rabbi Nachman Azariah, which is already brought in the Shach, so you can imagine how early he is. He says pretty much the same nekuda. Hein Amru v'Hein Amru. Chazal were the ones who were gazed on the Keli, which is Ein Ben Yomei. V'Hein Amru, that you go by Revesh Tamshus. Very simple. So it's the same thing as the Pri Megadim. So, if I'm allowed to say my own pshat, very geschmacke, there's a very geschmacke dogma vava in Siman Kuf Chaf Aleph, which is Hachshei Kalim and Yeridea on Hatzvi-Bais. The Mechaber over there in Hatzvi-Bais brings a machlokes between different Rishonim. Do you have to be magil a keli before you tevel it or not? Can I table a keli that I bought from a guy that's straight the way it is? Or do I first have to be machshir it and then I have to table it? What's the difference? But my kamiflagi. So according to one shitta, the shitta that holds that you do not need to cash it before you tevel it, very simple, 2 different mitzvahs. Hagolas Kailim is a gezeres hakosov, like the Yerushalmi tells us, that to be meitzim mitmasa shel akum ulachnise l'kedushasa shel Yisrael. That's all it has. That's the whole thing. Nothing to do with the blia. We're not mischashav with any of that. It's a mitzvah to be machnas kedusha. Now became a yid chayfetz. You have to bring kedusha into this chayfetz. On the other hand, what do the machmirim hold? It's nira ketevel v'shadetz biyadei. That's very, very nice. I'm asking to you. I'm not chaylik. Elamai, once I'm teveling the keli, ultimately it's nira ketevel v'shadetz biyadei. There's blias of iser in this keli. So the Daglam Revava writes a very geschmacka hamtzah. What happens if it's a keli which is no longer ben yemei? He's mekel. Why? Because there's no longer an iser nivla into it. You're going to ask me, there's an iser drabana which is nivla into the keli. Listen to what he has to say. He says, no, it's not an iser chefza. A keli, which is Eini Ben Yemei, is an Isser Gavra. I'm not allowed to use this keli. Why? Because I may come to use a keli which is a Ben Yemei. The blias, I don't care. The Torah never asked the blias as an Isser Chefza. It's an Isser Gavra, it's an Isser on me. Oh, that's all Chakira, yeah. So now let's take this Dogam Ravav and come back to Shidduch Mechaber. Mechaber, L'chayra, you can say, holds, is learning the Issa of Blias is like the Dagam Ravav. That's Issa Gavra. So when Chazal or Mechayev to be Machshara Keli, it goes by Rebbe Shtamshus. It's a Gzeira on me. I'm not allowed to use this Keli because I may come to use as a Ben Yemei. So Chazal were Gezer on me. I'm not allowed to use it. And the way that they were Gezer on me is Rebbe Shtamshus. It's a Gzeira on me and the Shtamshus of the Keli. So they were geyser on Reb Tashmishay of me, because it's a gzeir on me.
That's why the Alter doesn't answer the question. Because the Alter holds that he's in the Rabban.
Is if sechefza. It could be. But I'll call upon him to understand the shittas and mechaber.
You shouldn't use it that. So that it's not that there's a big it's a clear where it's there. Obviously, you said it's a half on it, you have to do something with it. But the garden, it's not it's a half even the amount of half because the half has this amount it's not half it's a
correct. Yeah. Okay.
You say any point you say it's a half.
Yeah. There's no is in the bli itself. So, l'chayra, this is a way that you can understand Shittas Mechaber. I'm not too far off. I'll tell you why. Because I saw the Igros Moshe takes a similar mahalach. He doesn't bring the Dagam Revava, but he says that Misvadas Atzmei that it's Issa Gavra, the whole Issa Ishtamshus. But Memela Chazal Kaveh to be matched with Reiv Tashmishay. So, l'chayra, that's one mahalach of how you can understand this machlekes. I think it makes sense. How else could you understand the? Okay. No, we don't. Well. It is a very big chiddush, and Shittas Mechaber is a very big chiddush, because correct. So La halacha, the Ramaz machmer, and the Ramaz, the Alter Rebbe is machriya that you do have to cash it, because I'm saying in Kuf Chaf Aleph and Yeridei and Sivav, I think it's very clear that if a keli was used by Eish and you only did Hagala, it's a problem. I feel b'diavad, because it's always going to be pilot ma'at. You didn't reach the full blia, but again, you could be mechalik. There's a reiv tashmisha, not reiv tashmisha. So ultimately, yes and not, because anytime, what's the problem with the kli cheres? which we applied this din a few times in a few other places in Hagolas Kailim, because it's always peilut ma'at. So even so, you can still learn it's a gavra, because you can taina that once I used it once, it became a ben yemei, and now that I'm using it again, it became ben yemei, and now there's an actual issa. What's a big kasha that we have onto this mechaber? Very, very big kasha that I don't have a teretz. And it's not my kasha, that's Achreinu pointed out. Minchas Patim, Chazanish as well. What happens when you use a davar charif? Use something sharp. It's mashva the tam, it's neisin tam l'shlach. It now gives it a tam rishon, and now becomes a ben yomei, so to speak. It's neisin tam l'shlach, and now becomes an issa deiraisa. So do you still have the call of the mechaber or not? Again, I was machsher alidei agala. I took out 90% of the bliyas. 10% is left. So let's put the lamdas of the dogma mervav on the side. But ultimately, I still have 10%, which this really shows you that it's a chefza. Because as soon as I use now a sharp thing, I cooked an onion, chiltis, whatever you want, whichever shit you're going to go with, the rash, whatever it is. Now it became neisin tam l'shvach. Now there's mamish is inside of it. Do I still have the kula of the mechaber or not? Because everyone agrees the mechaber is mekel because it's only nisad rabbanon. Either you go with the Prima Godim, either you go with the Ramami Pana, or you go with the Dogma Mervav. Whichever mahalch you're going to take, the kula is based on the fact, the Yesod that's an Issa D'Rabbanan. But now if I did a Maisa and I turned it now into an Issa D'Oraisa, L'chayra, you're stuck. L'chayra, it's a problem because now you made a nice in Tal Mishvach. I'm going to use the Keli, it's a Tam Rishon, it's going back into the food. L'chayra, you have a problem. The only thing is that nobody was mayor on this. Only the Achreinim, later Achreinim were mayor on this, and they wrote that it doesn't say anywhere. So, Tzarech Iyun Gadol, I don't know. If they don't know, I certainly don't know. But that's something to put on the side as a Tzarech Iyun. But there's a famous discussion, but let's say somebody wanted to be mamtzi a chumrah, that this call of the mechaber is only if you're using it by Rev Tashmisha. If I'm using it with Bishul, and that's Rev Ishtamshus, so some want to say that you're only allowed to use it with Bishul. You want to use it now with something with Eish, you can't do that. So that's already very, very different. When it comes to the chashash of a davar charif, that makes sense, because now you're making it to a deraisa, the whole like gozru, or it's a gavran, it's a rabban, whatever it is, that you still have it. I mean, you decide that you lose, because now it's an issa deraisa. If you want to use it with eish, l'chayra, doesn't make a difference, because ultimately the whole heter is based on it's an issa rabban, and if you're going with like gozru, ultimately you're coming down to like gozru. So even if I want to use it with the eif and achi chamer of eish, it doesn't make a difference ultimately. So l'chayra, you can use it with eish, you can use it with anything else. None of the poskim are made on this. This is somebody's own personal hamtzah. And l'chayra, it's you don't have to be chayshish to it. So you need shishim. If it's a benyam, you need shishim. Correct. Yeah.
So the Machaber's whole head is because it's a it's not straight. Because you're using a head that given we do it that way. Like you do have all the same.
Yeah.
But it's not even it doesn't have to be. But
If you have shusha.
we want to make a shusha because it's an it has to say that you use it.
So that's what the Prima Godim writes. It's dafka by Kilish and a Binyame. Yeah. There's no other way to learn it. There's no other way to learn it because the Yesod is in Kuf Chaf Aleph in Yeridea. If you didn't cash the Blia, there's nothing you can do with it. It's an Issa Denaisa, it's going to come back in. You ultimately have to come on to the Gazra. There's no other way to understand it. What do you mean? Yeah.
It's official.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have a meal of the years that you do, and you have a type of
Which is left.
It's like a second.
What's the six? What's the?
It's a sex figure that might not be.
Do you want to say that the item that you're using is not that kind of mechanic? If you want to say shit is but it's only chiltus and nothing else. So that's one suffix.
Right.
And what's the second suffix? We have a klal. The reiv pa'amim. Reiv. Saksvek is built off of reiv. So you have another reiv. That's reiv kalim. Cannot hold 60 times themselves.
So it's not itself. It's here. Most of it's taken out.
So the Gol Chumra, it's a very good question. You know, there many times we bring down, since we don't know how much is it, so the Gol Chumra to be Mashai connect the whole thing. We don't know. So if you're going to use it Alidei Bishul, why does not Bernat work? Why does the Gol work with not Bernat? You're not allowed to do L'Chatchila. It's a whole machlekes itself in Pesach, but what's the problem? What's the heter? Let's start with that. It comes out. It came into the keli. It came into the water. The chesher is going to come back into the keli. So why is it mutter? Because it's such a tam kolosh. So it's nivla beheter. If it was only nivla alidei not barnat, so such a tam kolosh is not a problem. But if it's an isser, what did you gain ultimately? You had isser. It came back in. It came back in because it's not the Bernat the Hetera came once, twice, so it's such a tam kolosh. So even it comes in, it came in, it was nivla through not Bernat the Hetera, so it's not a problem. Over here would be different. It would be not Bernat the Isura. That's not going to help you. Such a tam kolosh. Correct. So Lamais, we don't pass it like that. We were only makel because it's not Bernat the Hetera. So the tam kolosh, they do say that. The what?
You say that how can you explain that it's not a successor?
Okay.
You ultimately have a fire shot. You can say that fire shot is such a small shot.
Okay.
You have something that you
okay, could be. How much time do we have? So I want to speak a little bit about Evan Muluban. Everyone drives themselves crazy about Evan Muluban. So, first of all, why do we use an Evan Muluban? What's the purpose of an Evan Muluban? So the purpose of an Evan Muluban is when you have a keli, which you need to be machshir with a kli rishon, and you can't be machshir with a kli rishon because it's too big; it doesn't fit into the pot. So what do? You use Evan Muluban. What does that mean? How does it work? You take a kli rishon, you make an irui, right? But we said earlier they need kebel lekach paltai. So irui is not enough to kasher a kli rishon. So what do? You take an oven, you take a stone, you heat it up very, very hot, and you go around with the entire stone, and that hopefully that kashers it. So the Magen Avram brings from Shittas Abach that we're not so happy with the Evan Muluban. He doesn't like Evan Muluban. He says it does not make the water hot enough. The Metzias, so you can. That's the Shittas of the Bach. The Prima Gadam writes, "L'chatchila we are cheishes to Shittas Abach." If you're able to make a proper Hagolah, we do not go with the school of Evan Muluban. You actually have to be Magil, you make a proper Hagolah in a Kli Rishon. There's 3 Alter Rebbes that discuss an Evan Muluban, and you'll see in every single time that the Alter Rebbe brings it, you'll see that the Alter Rebbe first brings the shit of the Ramah, Evan Muluban, and he says you can use it, but the Alter Rebbe says this is only in the case if you're not able to. If you're able to be matched with a Kli Rishon, you should be matched on a proper Kli Rishon. Why? Because the shita is about to be cheshish because Yesh Emin is a shita that holds that Evan Meluban is not good enough. So that's a machlekes for itself. That you can see there's three alter rebbes. I can give out the matter of after. The shaila is, do I have to take the Evan Meluban and go around the entire area where the water goes or not? This is the shaila, yeah? So again, Hagolah we know has to cover the entire surface of the keli. When it comes to hot water, it has to reach every single place in order to be maflit the time, in order to spit out literally the blias. Does it work the same way with the Evan Meluban or not? Do I have to go around with the Evan Meluban every single corner or lavdafka? So, what?
Right, a little bit different because the water, so either we have to over the Evan in every spot or move the Evan around.
Oh, so this is but that's if you go with the Idri on the Evan, as long as the water got everywhere, you're for sure fine. The shaila is if I'm not doing that, if I'm going around with the stone itself.
If I'm pouring the water over that, that's how that I'm going to touch is you pour the water over the Evan.
Okay.
Right? So you walk, if you're moving the Evan everywhere.
Yeah.
So then in that case, you have everything. So the water's going.
This is the case of if you're going around with water and you're going with the stone separately, you're not being added directly on it. No, it's not. You're going. The Idri is going on the keli, and I'm reheating the water with the Evan. Pretty much. Oh, so the shaila is, do I have to take now the iron and go on every single spot, or maybe not? So let's see the lashon of the Ramah, the machlekes, the Magen Avram, the Taz, and the Alter Rebbe. It's very nice Mishmak Alter Rebbe. So it's also in our Seif, in Seif Vav. The Ramah writes as follows: "So Kairis gedelish la yuchal achris and teich kli rishen, big kalim that you cannot fit into a kli rishen. Yitain aleim evan melubon. You should put from the Ramah is the opposite. You put on the water the evan melubon. The ya'ara aleim reischim in the kli rishen, or you could try it another way. Have a kli rishen. Chen kol kayetz bezav v'yaver evan al kol hakli she'oz magel pulei." So the chayda from the Ramah is very clear that the Evan, it's not enough the water, but the Evan itself has to go around the entire keli. The Magen Avram in Seif Katan Yud Ches writes as follows: "Ubach kosav d'lei havik a klirishin. Evan Meluban is not like a klirishin. D'lei mahani rak b'kankanin b'kaisis, something which only needs an idrei. Evan Meluban, you want to make sure it's actually hot. You want to make sure it's a good idrei in klirishin, so you go to Evan Meluban. But to make it into klirishin, he says it's not good enough. Yesh lahachmer b'kainish yesh lamugonim ublites ke'en kapteirim uprachim she'oz iyafshel lahaver Evan al pnei kulam. Things that have designs, things which are sticking out. Ugonim, you have handles, you have designs, whatever it is, that you can't be married the Evan al pnei kulam. So that for sure you have to be machmer. You have to buy a big pot, and that's your only eitz that you have. The Taz, on the other hand, learns differently. The Taz writes in Sefkatan Yud Beis on the Ramah, when the Ramah writes "V'yaver Evan al pnei kulei," af agav de be'ezem mokem b'negei ha'evan mei harticha negim sham b'shadi. The Taz says it very differently. He says it's not a din in the stone; it's a din in the Hagolah. Do I need the stone to go in every single place? I don't. Why not? Because the Evan Meluban is going to be martiach the mayim, and it's going to be hot enough, so even though the stone itself didn't touch, it doesn't make a difference. It was martiach the mayim. If I went around and it was martiach the mayim, the water is still so hot, that's the main thing. That's the mechuvan by an Evan Meluban. It's not the din in the Evan. The Evan's not making the Hagolah. The Evan is only heating up the water to make the Hagolah proper. So, l'chayra, mashkafa d'sheina, you do have a machlekes between the Magen Avram and the Ramah versus the Taz. According to the Ramah, the simple reading of the Ramah is that you have to take the Evan and you have to go up pnei kulei. The Evan itself has to go up pnei kulei. The l'chayra is very clear from the Magen Avram as well that you have to learn that it has to go up pnei kulei. The Taz says clearly not. As long as the water reached there, you have Evan Meluban, you're going around, it's doing its job, it's being matiach the mayim, that's good enough. Let's see how the Alter Rebbe learns. It's very interesting. We know that Reiv Ta'amim, the Alter Rebbe is mitzaded with the Magen Avram. But But we'll see over here, not. Let's sit on the time, right? One second. The Alter Rebbe writes like this. The ima kaira higdola sheyafshel lagila b'techli rishain yitain allow aven melubon the yara allow maim reischim mina kli rishain the yaver allow aven al pnei kaira. Is mashmit kuloi the diuk from the Ramah and from the Magen Avraham. He's mashmit. All he says is the yaver allow aven al pnei kaira kedei she'atiachas kolamayim, like the Taz. Because what's the main thing? To be matiach the mayim, not about the oven. So
He's being matiach the mayim, that's the place where they spoke.
So the lotion is to be mad with the oven itself. That's the lotion.
Yeah, but the evan is going on. There is water. There's water from the dew. You put the evan on a dry table.
Correct. So let's say I missed a spot. The mayim were martiach because it's hot and hot, so it got around. Whatever was around it, it got hot. But the mice, I didn't take the oven and put it there. So the Pashtus, he's mashed it with the Ramah writes and with the Magen Avraham writes. And we have a Taz that learns differently, and he gives a yesod to what he's saying, because the main thing is the mayim are martiach. L'chayra, he's being retarded like the Taz. However, 1 second. This is, if you go like that, you're going to have a stid between Reisha and Seifa. So then the Alter Rebbe continues. V'afilu kaira gedela, it has ugonim, blites, kein kafteirim, uprachim, ein la takana, al yidei irei, ve'evan meluban, sheyavshel, lahavir ha'evan apnei kula. My dear calls up. Mitzad echad, what happened? L'chayra is very meduyik that the Alter Rebbe is learning like the Taz, because he gives the reason of the Taz as well. The whole Yesod of the Taz is, it's not about the Evan Melubin. It's about the Evan Melubin being Matiach the Mayim. And he's mashmit al Apnei Kulei. In the Sefer, he brings the Chumrah of the Magen Avraham. Baruch Hashem, we're not too stuck. There's Mechtes a shekel. He writes like this. Ein betaz have caught in Yud Mechtes a shekel. There's a famous story. There's a Rosh Hashiva who's going around fundraising for his yeshiva. So he went to a Gvir and he gave his pitch. And the Rosh Hashiva, the Gvir said, I'll give you, but first tell me Pshat and Magen Avraham. So he answered him, it doesn't work that way. You can't understand the Magen Avraham without the Mechtes a shekel. So the Mechtes shekel writes, "Mein betas is caught in your days. You call mokin the yesh lahem ugonim gamataz made the lemahani." Problem solved. The taz is made to ugonim. If you have designs on the keli blitas, things which are sticking out, the taz is made that you need to be mavir mayim with the evan melubon al pnei kulei. A regular keli, the Taz holds you don't. So with the Mechtes a shekel, it's very, very clear that the Alter Rebbe is learning like a Taz. What's the difference between the regular keli and ugonim, prachim, v'chulu, v'chulu? I think it's very pashut. The mime does not, by the time the mime gets everywhere, it's nitztanin. You have to get into all of the designs of v'chulu. So there, you have to be much more careful to make sure that the Evan Melubin actually is martiach. Because there's a much bigger chash of it cooling down. That makes sense. So even the Taz is made to that. In a regular keli, the main the ikar mechuvin, so to speak, is to be martiach the mayim. And by ugonim is the same thing, to be martiach the mayim. Elamai, you can't. Because by the time you get to all the designs, it's going to be nitztan, and you have to make sure for sure that the Evan Melubin got to it.
So the other departments can't do it.
Yes, correct.
The
The Taz is made to which part? The designs? You're right. He says, yeah, you're right. No, you're right. He says, Maida loy de mahani. No, you're right. Maida loy mahani. Thank you. You're right. He says, Maida loy mahani. What's on to the Lashon Al Rebbe one more time? Pashtus, yeah, because it can't get there. And the Evan movement can't fit in all the designs. You have a problem. So l'chayra meresh l'seifa, there's no stira. L'chayra, the Alter Rebbe is going with the Taz. The Mishnah Berurah as well does go with this mahalach as well, that you go with the Taz. The main thing is that the Meir Hariticha should actually be nirtach, it should be hot, and it's not about the Evan Malubin getting everywhere. If you have another Echitimsa where the Mayim are very, very hot, that's good enough. So emes. So when it comes to Ganim, when it comes to Yadis Akelim, Ganim, Blitas, whatever, Kafteirim, Krachim, the only answer is actual Hagolas Kailim. You just have to buy a bigger Keli. Anything else, as long as you see that it's nirtach, yeah. Interestingly enough, it's if you base when it brings Yadis Kalim, the handles of the Keli, Iri, the Kailim is good enough. Why is that? It never touches. And the whole Chumrah is Cham Tzasei Cham Kulei. So the Magen Avraham is Masber, why is it enough? The Rama writes that the Iri is good enough. He says it because it's the same Yisoid. Because the Yisoid of Cham Tzasei Cham Kulei is a pshat that the Blia is going from one place to another place within the Keli. So he's Medame to Iri. In the Keli itself, you have the Blia. It was Nivla into Makam Echad. Cham Tzasei, so say Cham Kulei. So it's Dema to Iri. It was Nivla and it went to Makom the Keli, so it's not to be machsher with Hagal itself also. I'm sorry, Iri itself, because it's the same Yisoid. No. Yeah, it does. Miyat Hashmisha, you have a double gosh that fell off, you have a piece of meat that fell off, so we chesed the shit is Arama, but it's Miyat Hashmisha, that something actually fell. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Okay, fine. B'makom she'amru l'katze out of Yom Tov.